Let's bring in Karl Rove. He's a Fox News contributor and former White House Deputy Chief of Staff for President George W. Bush. Could I ask you, Karl, just from a governing standpoint, there are some people who think that the president should issue a nationwide lockdown, and maybe talk a little bit about what it's like for a president of the United States to think about just allowing the governors to do what the governors are in charge of doing.
Yeah, look, we live in a federal system where there's a national government, state governments, and local governments, and state laws empower, in many instances, not just the governors, but also mayors and county executives or county judges to make these decisions. I think the president was wise to say, here are the standards, and we're going to let individual states decide when they're going to apply. Now, they made certain that everybody understood the standards. They made it clear that the CDC was recommending and the NIH was recommending certain courses of action. But I think it was wise. We saw this where very early, because of the volume of cases, California and followed by New York instituted these shelter in place. We saw it here in my home state of Texas, where Dallas and Houston and Fort Worth and then Austin, big cities, were the first to involve stay at shelter and home rules. But I really do think it's better. We shouldn't get in the habit of saying we're going to wait for Washington to tell us what to do. And that's why we are fortunate to live in a system where federalism applies.
All right, then also let me get your take on the numbers coming in from the unemployment report. And we also know that there's a lot of people who have been trying to call into their unemployment offices, because those are run by the states, and they just can't get through. So talk a little bit about the scope of this problem.
Well, it's extraordinary. By comparison, for example, in the aftermath of 9/11, we lost 1 million jobs in 90 days. Here we are losing nearly 10 million jobs in essentially a month. So this is going to be a very large problem. The good news is our economy is resilient, and if we can get our way through this, a number of businesses are going to be hurt, a number of businesses are going to go out. But the relief package, I have a great friend here in Austin who has for 30 years run a printing company, and this is going to save his business. I mean, he was going to basically take 30 years of his efforts in investing and building this company and pledge it to his employees to pay him 80% of their salaries for as long as his pocket would allow. And now he's able to say, I'm going to be able to keep my workforce together and save my business and come out on the other side. Not everybody's going to be like that, but the relief package is going to have a huge impact. What happened, how quickly we get through this, what shape we are when we get through it, and whether or not we have the courage and the drive and the energy to restore our economy is going to be a big question, but I think we're up to it.
All right, and still the 2020 election is happening. You wrote today about former Vice President Joe Biden likely to be the candidate, but what sort of strategy will he deploy in all of this? And the idea that he would call Trump to try to make some sort of deal or agreement, is there any appetite for that right now?
Well, I thought it was interesting. The president was asked, would he take a call from Biden? And he said yes. And Biden's people immediately said, we're going to try and set up such a call. I thought it was interesting, though, Biden's campaign response to it. This is what his spokesman said about this call to the president. The president had been slow and chaotic in his response. He spent months disregarding repeated warnings from his health and science advisors. I'd like to hear what Dr. Fauci has to say about that. He could have heeded Biden's public advice not to take the Chinese at their word. Well, wasn't it Vice President Biden, didn't he call the ban on China travel racist and hypersensitive? And the next one was more cases than, we have more cases than any other country in the world. Well, wait a minute, that's taking China at its word. We have more cases than China, but that's the official number. The unofficial number may be as many as 10 times as the 85,000 that they claim the cases that they've had. So, I mean, this is not a good way to sort of set it up. It was like, President made a good faith effort. I'm sure I'll be happy to take his call. And the immediate response of the Biden campaign was the kind of shrill hyper-partisanship that is what the country doesn't want right now. Right now, the country wants unity and less partisanship. And that comment from the Biden campaign, I think, was particularly tone deaf, as many of his comments in recent days have been. The accusations that he's been throwing that have been wild, the declarations that President Trump ought to listen to Dr. Fauci and Ambassador Birx, and that's just after we've seen the president standing alongside them in a briefing in which he's been sharing with the American people how he's taking their advice and acting on it. It just is a bad handling of it by Biden.
I listened to a podcast this morning where Dr. Fauci was interviewed, and they asked a question again. Does the president even listen to you? And Dr. Fauci says, absolutely he does. And I don't know if that was the answer that reporter was looking for, but that's the one Dr. Fauci gave. Karl Rove, thank you and take care.